Welcome to the Women Writing Podcast. I'm your book coach, Liisa Kovala. I'm an author, accelerator, certified fiction and memoir book coach, and the author of Sister's Winter War, Surviving Stutthof, and the upcoming Like Water for Weary Souls. And as a Finnish Canadian, I love my coffee. Take a coffee break with us as we chat about all things writerly with authors and publishing industry professionals. Today I'm having my coffee break with the award-winning author Sadiqa de Meijer. She is the author of the essay collection In the Field. Her previous books include Leaving Howe Island, The Outer Wards, and Alphabet. Her work explores landscape, language, inner lives, motherhood, spirituality, and the long wakes of colonialism and migration. She is the current Poet Laureate of Katarokwi, Kingston. Hi, Sadiqa. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm so good. I am just thrilled that you're on the podcast today, having a coffee break with me. In fact, I think you're having a chai. Is that right? I got my coffee.
Yes,
You've
beg
got the
pardon.
chai. My other favorite. It was so great to see you. We met in person at the Kingston Writers Fest a few weeks ago. This will be airing in later after Christmas, but so that would have been, oh my gosh, the time's flying. September? Was that in September?
It was, yeah, and that's right. And we'd already made the plan to have this conversation, but it was so nice to meet in
Uh,
person in the interval. Yeah.
yeah, that was great. It was such a great festival. It was just lovely to see people in real life, and it's always nice to connect with other writers and with readers and see what everyone's been doing. But you've been really busy. You have well, let's backtrack just a little bit. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your first collections that you put out, and then we'll head our way to the newest one. So what was the
Okay.
first one? I think it was poetry, right?
Sure. Yes, that was poetry. I think it was 2013. And so it's been a little while. And yes, that was a collection that I think maybe like some first collections was simply the moment when I had enough poems
Okay. Yeah.
to make a book,
Yeah.
so it wasn't so much a thematic work or although inescapably what, your themes and obsessions are in there,
Of course.
preoccupations, but yes, that was called Leaving Howe Island. And I was actually lucky that's when I made my first contact with Kingston Writers Fest was through launching that book there, which goes to show how supportive that festival has always been of local writers. Yeah.
Right.
Um, yes. And
And then your second book was also a collection of poetry. Is that right?
yes, in fact, I'm trying to remember. Two books came out in 2020, and I can't recall right now which one was first, but one was poetry. So
Yeah.
the Outer Words. So
Okay.
that then was my second poetry collection. It came out with Signal Editions through Very Cool, and that was more of a thematic work. So um, I had sustained a bad concussion, and in the book, I don't specify that as an injury, but it's more the idea of my child was 5, and the idea of mothering through a period of um, sickness or injury, which I tried to see as not just, in itself that might be a kind of unusual experience, but a sort of way to heighten how we look at mothering and parenting in general. So that was The Outer Wards. And that same year, I also released a book of essays, which came through Palimpsest, and the subtitle of it's called Alphabet. The subtitle is a memoir of a first language. And so it documents my perspective on writing in English while I grew up speaking Dutch until I was about 12 or so. We moved here. Yeah.
Amazing. And so I've been reading In the Field, which is the most recent publication of your personal essays, and I'm just devouring it. Like I just sink into your work and your words and just I don't know, it just transports me. I think they're so beautiful. But what I was surprised to learn was that you were a medical student.
Yes.
And so I'm curious about this. So here you are a poet and you've been writing personal essays, and that's how I know you. But then you have this whole background of having lived in the Netherlands and then coming to Canada and becoming a medical student. And so how are all those things like informing what ends up on the page?
Okay, yeah.
That's a big question. Sorry.
Thank you for the kind words about the essays. And it's, I mean, I think it's so legitimate that you asked that because I feel like when someone asks me an impossible question, sometimes my response is to write. You know, an alphabet was generated that way by when Leaving Howe Island came out, that first poetry book. A few people in interviews asked me, well, how does Dutch figure into your writing now? Because there were some traces of it in that work. And so I thought, well, that's such an enormous, I found myself struggling to answer the question
Right.
on the spot, right? And I knew it
Yeah,
was just
fair.
bigger than, you know, a
Yeah.
little
It's not a
sound.
soundbite answer.
Yeah, so I started to keep notes on the answer to myself in my notebook, just thinking, okay, each time that Dutch crosses my mind or that I engage with it, I'm just keeping track. And that grew into that book. Um, and in fact, the essay you're talking about is called Blood Work, about attending medical school, was similar in nature. That, of course, that's a question that's been asked of me over
I
the
bet. Yeah.
20 years since. And it's an unusual swerve to make in your life to go from that to being a poet. And it was similarly a question that took me a long time to really sort out because, like anything from life, it's complicated, right? There are different currents to the answer. And I found I couldn't just, I would have different things to say sort of briefly, depending on how well do I know this person? What's the moment? You know, do I feel like deflecting with some humor or do I want to open up about it? But ultimately, those are the kinds of questions that get me. I'm interested in seeing the work won't exactly be a definitive answer, but it will hold all the complexities that I'm trying to hold at that moment of being asked.
Yeah, 100%. I love the idea that those maybe casual conversations or maybe in an interview where you're asked something that creates a moment of reflection that needs to be explored in a deeper way. And I think that's so much of where literature comes from, poetry comes from is like digging deep into the things that have happened to us or that we've experienced or that we've chosen and and possibly not having really thought about them before in a deep way and then going, oh, what do I actually think about this? And how do I really feel about this? And
Yeah,
put it on the
I
page
mean,
is clarifying, I guess.
it really is. You're making me wonder if there must be a language with a word for that feeling,
There
where you
must be.
sort of have this pause and you think, oh,
Yeah,
that's material, you know, I need to
that's
go. Yeah.
material. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was just mentioned earlier to you that I was on a podcast this morning where I was being interviewed um and the question was about my Finnish heritage and how that is influencing my work, which it 100% is. And on the one hand, I'm quite conscious of that. Like it's a choice, but also on the other hand, it's quite like the why of it is different than the just, oh, I'm choosing to have Finnish characters in this Finnish historical moments. But then why am I so compelled to do that? Right. So it's digging into those ideas a little bit more
Yeah.
deeply that I think, yeah, like you say, writing about it will help to kind of clarify the reason for that impulse, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And when you say that, like I do want to make a distinction between once I'm ready to write about something, you can see that I'm writing in a rather long wake of things. You know, I moved to Canada when I was 12. This book comes out, I don't know how many years later, but a long
A
time
few.
later. Yeah. Medical school was 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm not writing it at that point to clear it up for myself in a sort of on an emotional or psychological level. You know, that I certainly there's needs to do that, and I keep a journal and I talk to close people about, you know, those things, but I don't see. the writing that I put out in the world as for that. It's for others. So my hope
Yeah.
by then is that I've metabolized it.
Right.
People are asking me, they're obviously curious about what's there, and I feel there's something there. So
Right.
it's sort of then like giving it a way outward is not the same thing as my coming to terms with it, but it
Okay.
is a stage that I have to kind of wait to reach.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly wrote about medical school before over the like for
Mm.
myself
Yeah.
in ways that I could recognize it wasn't ready to go
Yeah.
into a publication.
Yeah. How do you know then when it's time to let it go? Like, are you just, you've written about it, you've thought about it, it's maybe been years or decades, and then when it's time to put that, like send it to a publisher or whatever you're planning to do with it, how do you know that that's the right time? Or do you? Do you just say, okay, I'm gonna let this go now?
That's such a good question because I think it's such a nuanced feeling, actually. And um, I think I have landed on either side of the line at different times. Sometimes I have put things out and thought, oh, I don't think that was ready, actually, in retrospect. So um, yeah, fortunately, like mostly that's, it's nice that journals and magazines can take that work before you put it in a book. You get to try it out for a round like that. But I think the feeling is, let me try to put words to it. It's, do I need anything back from this anymore? When I put it out.
Mm.
Because if I still do, if I still need to be witnessed in what happened to me, I don't think that's what it's for. That's not what I'm asking of a reader. That's what I ask of a therapist or
Right.
my loved ones, or like, like I said, journal or a walk. Like, but to me, literature is supposed to be a gift in the other direction.
Mm.
Not that I don't find, of course, like writers do, we find sustenance and nourishment in how readers respond. That's natural, but I don't need it. At that point, it is it's lovely to receive, but I didn't do it for that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. I love the idea that once you let it out into the world, in some ways it's theirs now. Like it's not yours and you're not like like you say, lovely to hear responses and for people to talk about it or to send you a lovely email or whatever. Um, but people are bringing so much to the reading of it, of their own life and experiences that it's uniquely their own in a way. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I sort of love that it comes from here, but then it becomes something else for other people. And it's maybe sometimes quite different than we intended or what we thought we were doing for ourselves. So I think
That's
that's kind of
right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned a couple times here is the notebook. And I recall in your in the field, a really important notebook that you lost. Can you tell us that story a little? Because I was like, as a writer, I thought, oh, that's so heartbreaking.
Sure.
And like, what was the end result of that? Did you, first of all, I have to know, did you ever find the notebook? It was gone.
Even though the essay is deceptively called Found, I didn't find the notebook, no.
Okay.
Um,
No, no. So what happened in that instance? I'd love to know.
yeah. Yes, so it's a piece that opens the book, and also chronologically it's the one I started working on the longest ago. So I lost that notebook about 12 years ago, and it was a writing notebook. It was a little pocket-sized thing that keep on you. Um, some people use their phones. I like the notebook, and um, just everything went into it that at any given moment, that was the years when my child was young. She was with me a lot, and so it was these feeling of a stolen moments of these little thoughts and observations. And then I lost it, and I searched for it really hard. And
As you do.
as you do, yeah. And the essay, I mean, it opens with the idea of like, this isn't a disaster, playing a little bit with Elizabeth Bishop's one art, The Art of Losing. So it felt like one though. Why, right? So that was the premise. And one thing about that essay that also makes it personally meaningful for me is Stephen Heighton, who lives quite near where I do. And maybe I should say, so the Canadian poet, short story writer, novelist, essayist, incredible writer, and a friend. He not only helped me look for them, I ran into him. I was telling everyone I lost his notebook. So he looked for it and but also read the essay afterwards. And he was influential to me as you know, he often looked at my work and gave feedback over time. And so there's also the memory embedded there of this is part of how I became a writer in this community with people giving me feedback. And I remember very well which lines he appreciated and which ones he, you know, had me alter. Yeah.
Important that is, and how like a mentor like that is so valuable. And that idea that losing that notebook, I think right, lots of writers carry them, or like you say, have notes on their phone and snippets of things they observe or conversations, all those little, points that we write down.
Mm.
But in a way, I think, at least for myself, the idea of losing something like that would be devastating. But on the other hand, I don't know, I think it might be the action of writing it down in the first place that is embedding it into our being so that it's not gone. It's kind of always there. Did you feel like you were still drawing, like thinking about that notebook and writing about those observations you had later, or did you just have to like let it go and start again?
No, I think you're totally right. It is that moment is what places it sort of into your consciousness in a different way, right? Of writing it down. Yeah, because you can see in the essay too, I renamed some of what was in it. So it's obviously stored away anyway.
It's
Yeah.
there. It's
Yeah.
always part of and I think those kinds of things come up in the work in different ways, unexpected ways, and when they're needed. Like I think I imagine we have filing cabinets back there that we can just they're there and they're gonna pop up and when I need them. Not names though. Names never come forward for me when I need them. It's always when I'm driving home, I'm like, that's the name I needed. For whatever reason, I'm terrible
Yeah.
with names.
Well, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of losing a bit of progress on a writing file as you're working on the computer, and then, that also feels terrible when you realize it wasn't saved. But then I find some equally, most of, if you go back and try to redo it, then there's a lot, you remember it quite well, I think. It's all
I have had
happening.
that experience. Yeah. And I actually had that experience in a couple of times. Um, what I found really bizarre is I would go to rewrite something, and oftentimes I think, oh, this is actually better. It's fine. Like, right? Like it's actually better. It's almost like another draft. But there would be lines that I wrote exactly word for word from the previous one. And that
Yeah.
makes me think, where did that come from? Because my memory is not that good. And why is that phrase, that line coming out this way every time? It's almost like it's coming from somewhere outside of me and not me because I'm like, I don't know why do I have to write it like that? But okay, I'll just accept that. There it is on the page. It's
Yeah,
such a
well,
bizarre thing.
you're right, and it makes me think of also Virginia Woolf has that short piece about the like the wave in the mind, I think it is, of how ultimately the rhythm of the words is what carries the piece.
Yeah.
And I think we do have such a deep memory
Yeah.
for the rhythms,
Yeah.
and maybe that's part of where it's stored for you is
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, that could be it because there's something just about the pattern of the words and the sound of the words and it just has to be that way. If I alter it, I think, oh, that's not quite right. So and it just comes back to me in that form. So I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's kind of fascinating how the brain works and how the where this comes from. I don't even know. So I wanted to talk about one of the things I think is really interesting is that you were born in the Netherlands, came to Canada, um, and you did some traveling for writing. I think for research, right? Is that essentially what you did? Did you go back for a
Yes,
time to do some research?
that's right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so how important was that for you to actually be in those locations and be um see them at a different time in stage in your life?
Yeah, you're right. I used to go back to the Netherlands after we moved more regularly, partly, I suppose, because it was still under my parents' funding, but also because my grandparents were alive. So, as with many immigrants, you return until that point when you don't have
Yeah.
those people to visit anymore. And so, it happened at the point when I went in 2017 for the purposes of researching Etty Hillisom's um, life and work there. It had been 11 years, so that was a long interval. And then I went, and I'll tell you how important it is to go for because at that point I was aware also of that's a privileged stage of writing when you can set out to do a project like that. And I feel like my writing didn't start that way. It would just be like work with what's at hand. And then you get to this point where, yeah, it's such a privilege to have that sense of like, I'm doing this for the work. So I went and I part of her um like the part of Etty's life where she wrote her diary, her journal, was mostly in Amsterdam. She was in Amsterdam for most of that time. So I went to that city, which is also where I was born. And I wrote the essay when I got back, and I ran it by Liz Johnson, who's an editor who also helped me with Olive in the Field. Actually, she read it, and she's a wonderful writer as well. And she has a novel out. And if I knew the name right now, I would say it, but go look for Liz Johnson's novel. Yes.
Yes.
And um, sh she said, I can't tell if there's too much of you or too little in this essay because
Okay.
it sort of wove together my travelogue with the narration of Etty's life and times, right? And so I said, okay, I see that. And then I tried it both ways. I put less of me in a draft and more. And what came out was less of me wasn't working. It read too much as sort of journalism, right? As a different form of writing. More of me really brought out that I'm I was writing about Amsterdam and my own relationship with it, these pieces in the city, right? So I thought, okay, there's something here about a connection with that city, with my birthplace, and that's mine. That's not about the Etty piece. So
Mm.
I did a sort of like extraction.
Okay.
I pulled out those parts and reworked the Etty essay without them.
Yeah.
But then I had this seed for like, okay, this is an essay about myself in Amsterdam. I wrote it, and in writing that, I realized, no, I do need to go back. I need to go back and actually know that I'm asking this question of the city rather than doing it retrospectively and sort of between the cracks of the other research.
Right.
I need to go and really like acknowledge this is my method to feel my way through it and be present. And so I was fortunate to get funding actually through the Marion Heb Research Fellowship. And so, yeah, I went back in, that was in 2023 for that purpose. So that's when I went to Amsterdam, and that essay, the resulting essay is called Dwaallichtjes and is in the book. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so fascinating that you're writing one piece and that it turns out that, okay, there's actually more happening here, and this needs to be here, and this needs to be there, and I need to separate those out. And that kind of speaks to me about making decisions about structure and form and what is the story here and whose story am I telling? So do you find that because writing essays and poetry, I think, and short form pieces are like quite intense because it's more compressed and you really do have to get to the heart of it much more quickly than say if you're writing a novel or a longer creative nonfiction piece. So what is it that draws you to these forms, poetry or essay length pieces?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I agree with you. Essays are a lot of work as far as I can compare them now to poetry, and I've written some short stories. I feel like because each one is such a project in itself, it's and um yeah, there's almost some of the pieces I worked on over years and with a lot, yeah. So I agree, they are a heavy form to choose. I love them because partly because there's such an avenue for me for the best of thinking, I would say. Like Etty Hillesum has that phrase of like being a thinking heart as a writer. I'm really interested in that sort of merger of thinking and feeling, intuiting my way through something. And to me, poetry is it's so sonic and takes place just in just it leans for me more towards emotional spiritual. And so even though yes, there's overlap between what I do in both genres, and sometimes one can become the other. The essay is just a beautiful container for thinking in a way that to me feels like a little bit like this conversation. Like also I want it to be like have a warmth to it, a beauty to it, but like it's about ideas and experiences, and not so much about the lyric moment that
Right.
the poem leans on. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you're describing that. I feel like that yeah, I think even as when you read poetry, it is that emotional, visceral kind of sense that you're getting from it. But an essay can live with you for a long time after you've read it and just keep you thinking about ideas and the author's experiences and how they're connected to your experiences and how you're rethinking your experiences.
Yeah.
So I just find it just fascinating. But you can tell in your beautiful, beautiful prose that there's a poet in there as well, because every word is so well chosen, every line. Like there's no extraneous, kind of material that you're like, I feel like in a novel you can kind of meander a little bit and, you know, but in a short type piece like that, you have to get right to it. But the language is so stunning. And that's what, as I'm reading it, I'm like not only soaking in your ideas, but just every sentence is
Thank
pause
you.
worthy.
That's very kind.
Amazing. Yeah. So, I'm curious about what you're working on right now and where you're headed with are you working on another poetry collection? Are you working on essays? What's happening there?
Yeah, so yes, I am working on a poetry collection now. It's it's due fairly soon at the moment of our speaking, and I think when this airs, it will be a few months from coming out. So it's a spring 2026 release.
Amazing.
Yes, and it's called Cuff's People. Cuff is QAF, and which is a reference to, well, it's a letter of the Arabic alphabet. It's not a language I speak Arabic, but I am connected to it through my Islamic upbringing. And it's also a place in Islamic mythology. There's a mountain called Mount Kaf, which is said to go around the edge of the earth. So the earth is like a round disc, and this mountain encircles it. Yeah, and the poetry has to do with Kaf is for me in that book the imagining of a land for people of mixed race or ethnicity, and the exploration of what do those people have in common. Because being someone of mixed background myself, I've observed over my lifetime that, there is something, even though that can mean people from completely different backgrounds than my own. There's something about the being mixed itself that creates a certain kind of experience. And I was curious about that. I was like, what is it? What is that? And also, what would it mean if that was the basis for belonging somewhere? And I think because I'm so, the book essays is called In the Field, like I really a person who's quite connected to place and to landscape. I had to make a place. I couldn't imagine belonging without a land. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when you started writing this collection of poetry, did you go in intentionally thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to write about. This is the thematic thread throughout the the collection, or did you um, just write and then gather these together and say, oh, okay, I actually see that I'm exploring this. Like, which came first?
Yeah, it was a bit more of a process, like you said. I started writing poems where I was finding myself writing about these two streams in my background, maternal and paternal. And I was started just using the term mother country and father country to substitute for mother and father. And I was playing with that a bit, thinking, yeah, because, in my life, they are from different countries, but also a bit of the idea of like parents are so big to us psychologically, they are countries.
Yeah.
So that was happening. And then I started to feel, well, what's the in between though? There needs to be, there's these two locales that are real. You can find them in the world, but what is that in between? And then I came across the work of a Dutch artist. Her name's Jennifer Tay, and she is also of mixed background. She's Dutch and Indonesian, and she explores this in her visual arts practice, this question. And she created a world for herself. Um, that idea of a mixed world. And for her, it's not a place, it's more of a spiritual realm. She called it limbo, which I didn't realize it's so apt, but it's also a term from one of the Indonesian languages. So she um, represents that world in various ways, like through dance and through installations made of tulip petals, very beautifully. And I thought, oh yeah, that's what I want, but my world will have to be something else. Like I have to create it from my backgrounds. Um, so I also got in touch with her to let her know, this is very inspiring, and we had a bit of an exchange. And that's how the idea of cuff came about. I think it was not long after. Sometimes you gotta like ask the question of yourself, like you realize the need, and then just pay attention for a little while, and it'll come. I really have faith in sort of the currents of the world will answer somehow. And so it wasn't that long after that I read about this mythology of Mount Cuff, and I thought, oh, that's the place.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that feeling like I mean, I don't know if this is too woo-woo, but that idea that if you put it out into the universe that you need answers or ideas, once you express that, they somehow just appear. They just come. Like people just go, the right person comes along and has this little nugget of information, or you come across an article and I'm always like stunned. Like, is this because I put it on the universe, or was it just there and I'm just now noticing it? I'm not sure, but I like to think that the universe is conspiring to help me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not even what you want to hear, or like, but it'll come,
It'll come. Yeah.
There's
And like you say,
that-
paying attention, and all of a sudden there's like
I
these
think
incredible ideas. Yeah.
yeah, I think we have that capacity. It's a certain kind of attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that kind of attention is more prevalent in writers or artists? Like, or is, I mean, I guess we can all access that, but I'm just wondering if that's part of being an artist, is that you have that capacity to see things in the world with a different angle or perspective, or maybe see the importance in some small detail that somebody else might just pass on by. I don't know.
I mean, I'm gonna be quite explicit about it. I think it's part of our job, I do. I think it's part of our job just to remind people. Yeah, we can all do that.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Uh,
Lots gets in the way of
yeah,
it, right?
for sure.
So art is the reminder of your capacities that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Yeah, just to take a pause and look around and pay attention and be in the moment, and the things we need right now that are in the world that we're living in. And I think that's why I love so much about what you're talking about with this poetry collection is that idea that that feeling of a belonging and a place and a mindset, and in a world that's so divisive right now, do you think that that exploration came to you out of a need to understand what's happening in the world right now, or was that more on a personal level in terms of your own background and understanding your cultural heritages?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I think both. Of course, conflict isn't new in the world, and it's always, especially the kind of divide that my particular mixedness is, which is, to have a Northern European parent and a East African one who also has South Asian roots. Like, there's a colonial relationship there, right? It's not a direct one between Kenya and the Netherlands, but close.
Right.
They both, both are countries that were on opposite poles of this colonial process. So those relationships and conflicts have always been foregrounded in my life through family and through direct experience. But yes, I mean, I think to anyone writing now, writing in the past 2 years of this genocide process that we've been watching, it's impossible and unethical not to consider, really, right? Doesn't mean I don't think that the explicit address of it is necessary, but like that it permeates some sensibility in the work, certainly. And for me, yeah, I was laughing at myself this morning a bit, thinking like maybe the whole premise is just like, can't we all get along?
Right.
Like distilled into like what I believe Rodney King said.
Mhm.
Um, but it's, yeah, that wish. That wish is very elemental, and I think we have it from a very young age.
I think so too. I didn't remember if there was that I forgot what the book, but it sort of about everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten. You know,
Yeah,
that kind of idea,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
play nicely, share your toys, hands
yeah.
off, feet off, like just the basic way of treating other human beings with kindness and generosity and respect. And sometimes I just think, what are we doing? But I think literature and essays and poetry pa slow us down and pause us and reconsider that humans are actually can be quite incredible and beautiful and lovely and complex.
Yes.
So yeah, it's kind of a difficult time in the world to be an artist and having all the things, all the emotions and all the thought processes as we're going through our days. And then just wanting to pause and look outside at the beautiful changing leaves and breathe.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to hold it all. And also, I think to dream our way into different, because not just to say this isn't looking right. It isn't, obviously, but then in one of the essays and in the field, I explore the concept of hospitality a bit in relation to an art gallery setting, but like it comes up again in the poetry as, for me, my kind of model of like, how could it look different? Like hospitality is the act of receiving the stranger as one of your own. And one thing I learned about the word as I looked into it is that etymologically, like host and guest are from the same root, that there was this sort of mutual contract to it. And I, the divisiveness that I see right now is so disheartening. And I think there are different ways to go about encountering it, right? And I understand that hospitality is not the whole answer. That's not the answer if you're under siege, or that there, but it is the one that I my work explores most closely, because it's what I feel, I think in the much longer run will be sustainable, and that I hold hope for. Yeah.
Beautiful. Before we started recording, we were talking briefly about um, some travel you had done, and you mentioned going to a concentration camp. So I know a little bit about that, having gone to Stutthof myself. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, and um, did it influence some of your writing, or did you write a piece, or?
Yeah. Um, and I hope you share as well. Like, I would love to hear about your experience of going to Stutthof was in Germany, is that correct?
It was in Poland.
In
Yeah.
Poland,
It's the
yes.
first concentration camp built outside of Germany and the last one to be liberated. Notoriously brutal. So
Wow.
it was just a smaller camp in some ways, and than some of the more famous ones that we've heard of in film and documented in memoirs. But um, yeah, definitely a moving experience to go there. How was your experience? Where did you go, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so the Netherlands had a few concentration camps, but the largest one was Westerbork, and that's where I went because that's where Etty Hillesum was first first sent to in a sort of social worker capacity where she could travel to the camp and back home and kind of administer and help people who were there, which is something she chose to do. And then she was eventually imprisoned there as well. And it was a camp that, as I described in the essay, like it wasn't one where mass exterminations took place. In fact, it was meant to be a place where people felt almost relatively reassured about it was a transport camp and about the fate that awaited them when they left on the trains. Um, Not effectively, but like it didn't work, but that was the idea of it. And visiting Westerbork was really it was moving as such things are, just I think you probably know what I mean when like the ground has memory, I think, the earth does, and you feel it in a place where something like that has occurred. Um, but also what was really striking for me about visiting was the Netherlands is a really densely populated country. Like it's notorious that you really can't be anywhere without some sign of the human, like whether it's a radio tower or you're hearing traffic or you're seeing planes. Like it doesn't have a lot of wilderness or quiet spaces like, and yet Westerbork was like this journey for me into the quietest pocket of the country. And it was hard to reach just in terms of public transit, just to get there, kept getting more remote. And then the final leg of it was you could take a tour bus in, but I walked the last like trail towards it. And so you on that trail, you pass this row of giant satellite dishes. There's a station there, and it's it's a project called the Westerbork Telescope Synthesis Project, I think. So it's basically it's there because it's such a quiet place, meaning also in terms of radio and cell signals, it is the most protected spot in the country. And that's why those telescopes are there trying to listen in on whether there's life out in space. Yeah. I'm sure I've just simplified their scientific venture to the point where somebody is screaming into their radio. Um, yeah, so to me that was so symbolic of the idea of after the war, most Dutch people said, well, we didn't know. We didn't know that that was happening here, which I don't think is entirely genuine. I think it's wishful and it's also, you know, I think it's such a human impulse, right? We see it now. Like all of us know what's happening in Gaza, but we're also still like trying to make this remove of and people did it then. And um I found it, yeah, just really profound that like this metaphorical silence around it, the idea that as much as many Dutch people behaved heroically during the war and saved Jewish life, like lots of people were complicit too. And there was this camp, and you could read about it. You could find information that it existed. Etty Hillesum herself wrote two really amazing letters about the life at the camp, and they were smuggled out and they were published, you know, it was there, the knowledge was there. And so to me it was like going there was this real feeling of an enactment of like this was hidden
Mhm.
away, like the country's subconscious, and it still in some ways
Mhm.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hard to put into words what those experiences can be like. I totally agree that you need. I always, when I'm researching something, I want to be in the place if I can be, and I know what you mean by the. I think our bodies hold memories, and I think the places hold them. And to stand on the ground where things happen that my dad had described to me, and see just the landscape and the foliage and the barbed wires, and like a lot of the structures are gone, but some are still there. It's just a really overwhelming feeling to stand there compared to just reading a history book about what happened, right? Like I knew so much going in, and then to be there just was a rush of overwhelming feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I remember also this pocket, this town is about 30, I don't know, 35 kilometers maybe from Danzig, what was Danzig at the time, Gdansk. And it was also a bus trip. And I remember seeing sort of the narrow railroad lines beside us. And that is how those prisoners arrived at the camp, is on sort of narrow gauge railroad cattle cars. Shipping them in. And so the bus was kind of going through the countryside and then through the forest. And it felt like we were going remoter and remoter. And but still this train track. And I thought,
Well, ominous.
it gives you
Yeah.
chills, to think about it. But the one place that really fascinated me for when I was traveling was I'm gonna say Neustadt was the name of the town in Germany, and it's where these prisoners were. Sort of, it was the end of the war. It was May 45, and the prisoners were being gathered and put onto ships, and uh, in the bay, and British bombers came and bombed the ships that contained concentration camp prisoners. My dad was supposed to be on one of those ships, but was not quite there yet. He was sort of being transported. And so that saved his life, because I think it was 6,000 concentration camp prisoners died in that moment, but it's also the day of liberation. So when I went to that place to see it, it's a quaint, beautiful little town on the bay with lovely beaches, children playing, the sun is shining, the water is sparkling, the bicyclists are going by, and I'm standing there thinking, oh, this is where this happened, there's this way, and I'm kind of visualizing all these horrific moments. But on the other hand, like, so that exists, but also the fact that this place now is this place of beauty and rest, and folks come and gather, and I think, oh, like, of course, that's what we want to, I want from this place. Of course, that's where we want to be. Of
Yeah.
course, standing here and children are playing in the water. Like, but it's very hard to reconcile with what you know about the place also from all those decades earlier.
And
So
I
I
think
found
that,
that like a very strange feeling of like, how should I be feeling in this moment?
yeah, that's so beautifully described. And I completely agree with you. Like it's really good to see healing in a place, right? To see like,
Yes.
oh, we've come to this moment of peace, local peace, right? But at the same time, the fact that you were there and you could hold the memory of what happened, which for you is not just, the relationship that I have to Etty is literary, but like it's you have like ancestral memory there. Like look at what happens when we forget, right? So we do need to know. We do need to remember. And um yeah, similarly in Amsterdam, I had moments where I thought like, look at this spot, like it's beautiful. It's like it's a moment of real genuine peacefulness here. And then seeing almost through time, like to the past on that same spot. there's a duality to that that maybe is also part of the artist's job, to remember.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. I think that's the um like the role of art and of literature and um you know plays like that we go back and look at those things and examine them and feel what we feel about them because like you say otherwise I think there's a forgetting that can happen and um it doesn't for other folks they think of World War II as being a really long time ago and for me it's yesterday because he was telling me his words
Mm.
just recently so it feels like a moment in history that is not that far removed. I mean I can understand after generations it's harder to keep that feeling but I think the closer you are to the subjects that you're writing about, the more intense it might feel. And then when you see things happening, I don't know that, I mean, we say, if we remember, we won't repeat that history, but I think we just do. Like the history gets repeated in lots of different ways. But I mean, if as artists we can put those in front of people and remind them, that might make a small little difference. I'm not sure. I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of the phrase by James Baldwin, I think is that, to paraphrase it, the artist's role is to be a sort of spiritual and emotional historian. And I think that is what you and I both are sort of trying to distill from a moment like that. There's the facts of the history, and there are many, document that's historians document those, right? And they enter into our work to sort of anchor and locate what's going on. But then there's this less visible layers of things that you're trying to also be the historian of. Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, I feel honored to talk to you about all of these things and just, I love your writing. I love your essays and the reflective way that you talk about your work and the power of artists. I really appreciate it. And I'm just so pleased you could take a coffee break with me today.
Thank
So
you.
delightful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I feel like we could easily talk another hour. So thank you for the encouragement.
100%, right? For sure. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thanks for having me. All right.
Do you have writing goals that you want to achieve in 2025? If you need support, encouragement, accountability, and community, join the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi-weekly to set writing goals and get pages done. Go to Women Writing on Substack and subscribe. Let's create a little magic this year. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.